How's it going, y'all? This is Encyclopedia Mac doing another album review. Today I'm going to be reviewing Jodeci's third album, The Show, The Afterparty, The Hotel, which is their third and final album to date. And I'll kind of get into that a little bit later. But Jodeci as a group, classic R&B group from the '90s, very influential. Group is composed of four members, two sets of brothers: Casey, Cedric Haley, and then Jojo Haley, and then Devontae. I believe Devontae's first name is Donald the Great, and then Dalvin the Great. They both started off in gospel groups. Casey and JoJo's group was Little Cedric, and the Haley Singers was composed of Casey and JoJo, their father, and I believe some other relatives, and then Devontae was in the Great group, the Great Brothers or something like that. I believe it was Devontae, his dad, and once again maybe some other relatives or other members. And Devontae, I believe he didn't sing back then. He might have sang background, but it was pretty much his dad was the lead singer and some other members. He was more of the musician, but they both were popular around North Carolina. Very popular, had popular tunes on the radio and that type of thing. And as the story goes, they both were, working in girl groups. Working with a girl group, and the girls that they were, I think, dating and then working with at the time, kind of recommended like, hey, you guys never met each other. Y'all both are, live in the same city and y'all work in the same area as far as making music. So y'all probably need to hook up and try to do something together. So as the story goes, they both met in the studio one night, and I think Casey and Dalvin got into it because Casey thought they were trying to date one of his girls or something like that. So Casey and Dalvin got into an altercation, but JoJo and Devontae, I'm not sure if they knew each other before that, but evidently they clicked right off the bat and were making music together. So they finally all just let that stuff go and started working together, doing demos. And then Devontae, I guess he got kind of dissatisfied with North Carolina. I guess there's really not a lot of opportunity out there. So he had went to Minneapolis to sign with Prince, and because I heard evidently he's a big Prince fan, and just didn't work out. So he went back and just as a group just decided to, hey, let's go to New York and sign with Uptown Records. I mean, it's Jodeci as a group, and they just one night just went to New York and scrounged up the money they had, and um, went to Uptown Records. And Uptown Records at the time was one of the premier labels in music. They already had their own movement going on with Father MC. With Heavy D and the Boys and Guy. You can definitely tell the Guy influence on Jodeci. So I'm thinking they probably, hey, this is the label we need to be at. Where some of our people we look up to are at. And Andre Harrell really had a movement going on with that label. He was the founder of Uptown Records, and they pretty much, got there and just kind of waited and got opportunities to sing for Andre live, and they pretty much got signed on the spot. And they were just waiting in New York. He had them living in New York, just working on the album and kind of developing their sound for that period of time. And like I mentioned before, you just have to pay your dues. These are days of paying dues, so they did background work. What really got them kind of out there was Father MC's Treat Them How They Want to Be Treated. They were doing backgrounds for Father MC, also doing backgrounds for Tevin Campbell. KC wrote and did some backgrounds for Ralph Tresvant's first album. So they were just paying dues. So when they were ready to finally get out there, they were ready. The first single they dropped was Gotta Love, which more was just kind of showing their image, how they were different from other R&B groups at the time, like Boyz II Men, whatever the case may be. And I'll kind of get into that in a minute. And they out the gate, Forever My Lady, after Gotta Love and Stay and Forever My Lady and Come and Talk to Me drop, they were just a hit out the gate, just classic R&B songs. Some of the best R&B songs, definitely of the '90s. So they just blew up out the gate, and triple platinum album. And just good music, no gimmicks, just good singing, good production, lyrics, and the whole 9 yards. And they were different from R&B groups at the time. Like I said, the clothes that they wore, it was because before this, really dating back to like the 40s or whatever you call it, 50s, 60s. R&B groups, they always had suits on, sequins on, polished shoes, that type of thing, real clean cut. But Jodeci decided to market their style to more of like the kind of the hip hop audience, the street audience. Like the stuff that they were wearing would be stuff that young men in their 20s or teenagers were wearing at this time. Backwards caps and baggy pants and like combat boots previously were kind of considered to be more of like a rock and roll type of thing, but they brought that type of style in the mix where everybody's wearing combat boots. So their style was different. So and even to this day, you look at most R&B groups, they're more of wearing those type of things more than suits nowadays, if you really look at it. So definitely influential. You can tell the influence that they had on other groups. And then you had KC and JoJo. KC is a powerful singer. That raw gospel sound, and like I said before, he's one of the few baritone, but he can push up that at tenor range. That's where his real power comes in, and just the way he emotes is just unique. It's just like it's hard to explain. It's just a gift. And they always Casey and JoJo have always sang the same. If you listen to their early gospel records, I'll try to post some under the clip here. They both sing the same way as adults as they did as kids. So that gospel style is something they always kept with them. And JoJo, he has that high tenor, which is very unique. At that time, it was like JoJo, Raphael Sadiq, Tony, and Stokely Williams of Mint Condition. With the high tenors, but JoJo's got a real great high tenor. It's rare to find those, and then he had a really good falsetto too. And you really hear like his the way Devontae kind of put their backgrounds together. You can really hear JoJo's harmonies in the background. So another talented singer. And just R&B groups in general, they always kind of try to have that kind of 1-2 punch. Like the Temptations had David Ruffin and Eddie Kendricks, like the smooth and rough sound, or like the Dells, they had Johnny Carter, the smooth singer, and then Marvin Jr., the powerful baritone. Kind of like the same thing. You want somebody to, I guess, kind of rip your heart out with the vocals, and you want somebody to croon. So this was kind of like the same thing with that. Casey was the raw gospel sound, and then JoJo was coming smooth with the high tenor. And Devontae was really kind of like the mastermind as far as he did most of the production and writing, and played different instruments and that kind of thing. Vocal, arranged everything, arranged the vocal arrangements and harmonies and that kind of thing. So he was really kind of like the mastermind of everything, and definitely unique talent. And the fact that he made all these albums consecutively, and not only just wrote and produced all the songs, but to actually have hit records. I mean, that's rare. That's rare. A lot of people couldn't do that. A lot of people, they relied on other people for a hit. But he did it all himself and had consistent hit records. You have to commend that. And then Dalvin also did production and writing as well. And there was a lot of competition in the 90s. The competition was fierce, not just in R&B, but just in music in general. But Jodeci still, held their spot. It was still consistent. So they came out again in 1993 with Diary of a Mad Band. Came out with some more classic singles, Cry for You and Fiendin'. They still they beat the sophomore jinx. A lot of groups came out with debuts, but they couldn't really catch it. Especially after the New Jack Swing era had ended. They stood strong, and then their third album, which I'm going to be reviewing, the Show The Afterparty, The Hotel, dropped in 95. Another platinum album. So they were, they stayed consistent through all those years. Unfortunately for us, they took a hiatus in 1996. As we know, Casey and JoJo had solo success, All My Life and other hits at that time. So they just, as the story goes, like they all said, hey, they never really broke up. They always were cool. They just wanted to take a break from the group. Devontae, he was doing a lot of production for other people, Tupac and Usher. He had the group called Swing Mob at the time, who consisted of, Genuine, and back in the days, and Missy and Timberland, he had Magoo. It's a lot of people, in that group. Static Major, he had a lot of people that he was working with, but that eventually didn't work out. But he was doing work at that time. Dalvin was doing production for other people, Wu-Tang Clan, Mary J. Blige, and they were doing side projects. And they were supposed to, I believe, get back together in 2000, but for whatever reason it didn't work out. And it's been 20 years since Jodeci dropped their last album. We fans have been waiting for some new material for a while, but it's kind of just like just waiting. You know, it's like between that and Dr. Dre's Detox album, it's like, this ain't never coming out. You know, but and I'm not gonna get into the bad stuff. I mean, you know, they had the ups and downs like everybody else, but you know, good for us. They joined again, performed at the Soul Train Awards in November of last year. So you know, they'll definitely get back together. Not to get back together, but they definitely drop a new album. They dropped 2 singles with Nobody Wins and Every Moment that are doing well on the radio. They're bubbling up, and they're supposed to drop a new album later this year. I'm not sure exactly what month, but they're supposed to be dropping a new album this year. I actually heard Timbaland's supposed to be helping them work on this album as well. So definitely look forward to that. So yeah, you know, us fans they've been waiting since '96 for them to drop a new album. You know, we're finally gonna get our wish. So that's a little short bio on the group. Like today, I'm going to be reviewing the show, The Afterparty of the Hotel, released on July 18th, 1995. Went to #1 on the R&B charts and then #2 on the pop charts. And they dropped 3 singles from this album. First single was "Freaking You," which everybody just loves. You know, released in May 30th, 1995. Gold single. And it went to #3 on the R&B charts and then #14 on the pop charts. They dropped a second single, "Love You for Life," which was released on August the 29th of 1995. That went to #8 on the R&B charts and then 31 on the pop charts. You know, very smooth ballad. Third song, up-tempo dance track, "Get On Up," which was released on January 11th of 1996. Another success. That went to #4 on the R&B charts and then #22 on the pop charts. And then, like I said, they went to hiatus at that time. But I know Jodeci fans are going to hit me over the head with this, but I think this was their best album and most consistent album and most up to date. Like, you can listen to the show, The Afterparty, The Hotel, and it sounds like it could have been released yesterday. Like, no disrespect to their first 2 albums, they're classic too, but the first album you can definitely tell it was New Jack Swing all the way through. Second album was more of that G-funk style, that kind of George Clinton type of R&B hip hop sound. But you know, this album here sounds the most up to date. It was like a smooth. They have kind of like a smooth funk, a smooth kind of dark funk throughout the whole album. It's just a sound that, to me, it was their most cohesive album. Like, it sounds almost like kind of like one piece of music. They just seem to be hitting on all cylinders on this particular album. As you know, like, in my personal opinion, with the Forever My Lady album, the ballads, ballads, those are the best ballads on their first album. They just hit it perfectly. But the upper tempo tracks, like, they were, kind of okay. And this is my personal opinion, but they were okay, but not as good as the ballads. The second album, was good material as well, but I feel like they kind of got caught up too much into them being the quote unquote bad boys of R&B as far as the sound, the whole R&B hip hop thing. At the end of the day, they're an R&B group, and I felt like that second album, which is good, I have that all 3 albums, but it just felt like they were kind of trying to do the hip hop thing too much, so it didn't really mesh well. But this one just was a smooth ride all the way through. They had some interludes too throughout this album. I guess some people either like that or you don't. But as far as the music goes, they just follow consistent funk, and it's just like as the album progresses, it gets better and better and better. Bring On the Funk is really was after the interludes, like the first song, kind of a party track, but they had a smooth groove throughout the album. Dalvin, everybody was getting better and better. Dalvin was getting better on production. To me, he was just starting with the second album, Diary of a Mad Band, but the 3 tracks he did on here, Fun Tonight and Some More, and then Get On Up, so he was getting better with production, see the mesh well, and then Devontae took it from there. And like I said, the album just gets better and better and better. Just a smooth groove throughout. Just, everybody's kicking, the vocal range just seemed to mesh well with that production. And also, like Missy and if you don't know, like Missy and Timbaland were doing some production and writing on this album as well. My favorite song on the album is "Let's Do It All." Very, very overlooked song. If you fans kind of overlook that song, or you just remember the hits from that song, go back and listen to "Let's Do It All." Everything, just the backgrounds, the singing, the production is just super smooth, man. They just they just hit it out the park. And then by the time you get to Pump It Back and Freaking You, they just hit it with the home run. So in my personal opinion, this album is definitely 4.5 stars out of 5. Their best album, and I think that's why. A lot of groups, when they're in there, they kind of start falling off musically. So you're like, okay, well, they do need to quit or they do need to take a break. But for fans like me, I felt like, man, like they quit on their best album, or they quit with you know freaking the top R&B single and all that kind of stuff. So we were kind of disappointed that they stopped at that time. But yeah, this it was just their most cohesive and best album, in my opinion. They just followed a certain production style that just seemed to mesh well. Time and place, falling. The last song, Good Lovin', Devontae does with an acoustic guitar. So it was just to me their best and most cohesive album, and just follows just a smooth dark production that just fits well with Casey and JoJo's vocals. So this is the best album in my opinion, and I'll probably do their first 2 albums and say what I like about those. But this is a definitely in my opinion Jodeci's best album, definitely another classic album, and it's sets the pace, I guess, for the new album. I'm glad to see that they're got back together and making new music. But this is my favorite album from them. Definitely pick it up. So I don't want to keep y'all too long. Just want to do another quick album review. So this is for Jodeci, the show, The Afterparty, The Hotel, and I guess I'll see y'all later. Thanks.